What's growing on, gardeners? It's Saturday, December 23rd, and we are only 2 days officially into winter here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina, but the entire garden is doing awesome. And on today's video, I'm going to share with you 5 reasons why winter gardening is better than summer gardening. Yes, you heard me right, and now I'm going to explain to you exactly why.
If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell to receive new video notifications, and check out our Amazon storefront and spread shop in the video description for a list of the gardening products I use and awesome custom designed apparel and other gear. Your support is greatly appreciated.
It's natural to assume that gardening is a summertime activity. After all, that is when things are most conducive to growing. At least it seems like that to the untrained eye. But the reality is, there are so many things that can go wrong in our garden in the summer. So many challenges that we have to overcome. Whereas in the winter, we really only have one challenge, and that is temperature regulation. If we can just get the temperatures under control, then gardening becomes easy because there's really no other challenges. And luckily, with our human brains and ingenuity, we can make that happen. Winter abundance is just incredible. I mean, look at those collard greens and lettuce. Look at all of the garlic plants. They are just thriving. Look at these massive heads of mustard greens. We have leeks galore growing like weeds. We have an abundance of radishes that are coming up. Peas, snap peas. They are going to be ready soon. Look at all of those green onions, just incredible. And just look what we have growing on in here. Mustard greens, cabbage, green cabbage, purple cabbage, Brussels sprouts. Just perfect broccoli, mature and ready for harvest. So many types of beautiful, delicious kale. And don't even get me started with herbs. We have thyme, perfect cilantro. We have more leeks. We have dill that is coming up and getting ready for harvest. More kale, more leeks, all kinds of beets growing. Our carrots are starting to break ground. And if you're blessed to live in a climate where you can grow citrus, I don't have to tell you how privileged we are to have ripe citrus this time of year. The abundance we have this time of year, we are just so thankful for. We are truly blessed, and it is all so easy. All of this abundance around me is just so easy. I spend literally 20% of the amount of time working in my garden in the winter than I do in the summer. That's why I say winter gardening is better than summer gardening. So what exactly are my secrets? Well, I will tell you, and here are the 5 reasons why. Reason number 1 why I say winter gardening is better than summer gardening is there are no insect pests. Now, I don't know what your climate is like, but here on the East Coast, especially in the Southeast, insect pests in the summer are an absolute nightmare. We are overwhelmed with leaf-footed bugs and Japanese beetles and stink bugs and all kinds of other leaf hoppers and horrible things, white flies, cabbage moths, squash vine borers, pickle worms. It's just a nightmare growing things here in the heat of the summer, and you just wind up having to spend all of this time spraying your garden. Now, I know some people think that you can find ways of having everything work for you with just natural defenses, but the fact is a lot of the insect pests that we deal with here in North America are imported from other continents. They are invasive from free trade in between continents. You have bugs that hop on deliveries from very far away, and then they colonize here in North America with absolutely no predators, so they just take off. And those are a lot of the pests that we deal with in our gardens right now, and you really just have to do some type of spraying in order to keep them under control, at least when you live in the humid southeast. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't like spraying my garden. Even with organic insecticides, I don't like paying for them. I don't like the huge amount of time that it takes. I don't like the fact that during our thunderstorm season, we get so much rain that I go through the cost and the time of spraying everything, and then 6 to 8 hours later, it all just washes away. It's very annoying, and I love the fact that in the winter I don't have to do any of that because all of the insects for the most part are dormant. Yeah, we get a nice 60-degree day like today, and some of the gnats may come to life. You may see some flies here and there, but they're not really doing any damage, and as soon as the sun sets, they go back to sleep again. So being able to garden all winter long without having to spray anything for insects is just a revelation. It is wonderful. It is so much more fun to garden, and you can keep things as organic as humanly possible because you just don't have to put any kind of sprays on your food. Reason number 2 why gardening in the winter is better than gardening in the summer is there's no disease. Just like with the insect pest problem, we don't have to spray any type of fungicides or bactericides this time of year because all of the diseases, for the most part, are dormant. Now, in the summer here, because it's so incredibly humid and it rains so much, we have nightmarish conditions with diseases. So once the humid weather and the wet weather starts, we have no choice but to spray our gardens if we want our plants, especially the sensitive plants like tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers, to survive all season long. Well, even the organic fungicides I don't like using because, again, it is a cost and it is time. I loathe having to spray my entire garden because of all the rain and humidity that we get, and then the next day it just all washes away again. It's like, what am I even doing this for? Well, again, this time of year we don't have to worry about any of that stuff because there are no active diseases in our garden. So once again, we can garden as much as we want without any time or money spent spraying our food. Reason number 3 why winter gardening is better than summer gardening is you rarely, if ever, have to irrigate your garden. That's because of 2 distinct characteristics. Number 1, pretty much everywhere in the United States gets rain in the winter. Places like Texas, the desert Southwest, the West Coast, they get little to no precipitation in the summer, while in the winter they actually get a pretty decent rainy season. And number 2, generally speaking, the evaporation rate is low because the angle of the sun in the sky is low, and it's also fairly weak. So if you get rain about once a week or so, the sun just isn't there to evaporate all that rain from the soil. So generally speaking, you won't have to irrigate your garden, which is a huge time saver and saves on costs. Now here in the Southeast, we get a lot of rain in the summer. However, the sun is so intense that I often still have to irrigate. So I can't imagine what people that live in the Southwest or the West Coast have to deal with, where it doesn't rain for weeks or months at a time. So it's so nice to not have to go through the stress of watering your garden because there's just enough rainfall to deal with the much weaker conditions of the sun. Raise your hand if you love weeding your garden. I'm sure some of you out there see weeding as therapy, but for most of us, we probably don't like weeding our gardens very much, especially during the heat of the summer. So my 4th reason why winter gardening is better than summer gardening is you don't have to weed, or at least the weed pressure is dramatically reduced. That's because the soil is cold enough and the air is cold enough right now that weed seeds generally don't germinate. Now this bed of collard greens and lettuce is really coming along well. This has been growing for probably like 6 to 8 weeks now, and I haven't actually performed any weeding since I transplanted things out. And I'm looking around right now and I'm seeing a couple of little things germinate here and there. There's a little weed, there's a little weed. Here's a little tiny weed. There's no way I can even show you this on the camera. They're so small. So even after over a month of not really doing any work to this bed, and I live in a pretty warm climate where weed seeds can still germinate during the winter, I still have little to no weeding to do. Without having to weed my garden, it makes everything so easy. I mean, just look at that bed. It's basically pristine. The same situation is true with my garlic. I have not weeded this since I planted my garlic several weeks ago, and everything looks fantastic, weed-free. Even with my old kale bed, I actually planted these kale plants early last winter, so they're almost a full year old, and there's just nothing really germinating here. It looks like maybe I have one small weed that's growing in there, but you know what? If that's the only weed pressure I get this month, that is pretty amazing. And the 5th reason why winter gardening is better than summer gardening is there's no sweating. I don't know about you, but where I live, it is brutal working in the dead of summer. So I like to do all of my heavy physical labor this time of year. For example, one thing I'm doing this winter is I'm building a lot of these hoop structures on my raised beds because they're great for year-round gardening. I can keep the frost off during the winter. I can keep the insects off during the spring with insect netting. Then I can swap the insect netting out for shade cloth in the summer and keep the plant stress lower by keeping them under partial shade, and it all works so well. Another thing that's great to do this time of year is to mulch your yard. So if you like adding mulch to all of your fruit trees, or you like adding compost to your garden, the winter is the time to do that. So for example, now is the perfect time to get yourself a big load of wood chips or a big load of mulch and then wheelbarrow that to all of your fruit trees because you're not going to sweat. You can take advantage of the cool weather. And while I still still think it's too early to add any compost, at least finished compost, to your garden bed. If you want to wait until late winter, when planting is imminent within a few weeks, that's a great time to do that heavy manual labor. So any kind of construction projects or builds that you want to do, now is generally the time to do it, because once the late spring rolls around and you get in the gardening mood, you're going to be very happy that the hard work is done when the sweaty weather comes. So in order to garden in the summer, we have 5 enormous challenges that we have to overcome to be successful. But in the wintertime, we only have one challenge, and that is the cold weather. If we can just overcome that, we can grow food, and luckily, with our big human brains and a little bit of ingenuity, we can do that. Now, first off, if you live in zone 8 like I do, or warmer, maybe even mild zone 7s, you can grow out in the open, mostly unprotected, throughout the entire growing season. So if you live in a climate like mine, there's really no excuse why you can't grow something in your garden all year long. Now, for those of you that are in zone 6s and 7s that are a little bit colder, maybe even some milder zone 5s, all you really need to do to grow year-round is to build yourself some type of structure over your raised beds or row covers in your garden in order to provide protection against the hard frosts and freezes. So just because you may not be able to grow things out in the open unprotected in your garden, don't let that be an excuse as to why you don't grow anything during the winter. All you need is a cheap little PVC hoop structure like this and some agricultural fabric, and that can have you growing things like carrots and beets and kale and collard greens and mustard greens and cabbage and broccoli and other frost-tolerant, cold-hardy greens all winter long. Don't forget about things like lettuce and radishes and turnips and Brussels sprouts and things like that as well. These PVC hoop structures take less than an hour to build. They're really cheap. I have lots of tutorials on how to build them. I will make sure to drop a link down in the video description to a playlist that shows how I build all of these different structures. But what about the folks out there that live in cold zone 5s or zones that are even colder, where even with some type of hoop house structure like this, it's not enough to grow things all winter long? Well, folks, I'm here to tell you that if you really love this gardening thing, it's really something that you like doing and it's therapy for you, I just have to tell you, you have to invest in some type of greenhouse. You have to get a greenhouse or a high tunnel or something like that in your backyard. It doesn't have to be anything serious. It doesn't have to be something really expensive. You can get kits for a few $100s. You can get large commercial kits for a few $1,000s. And I know that that is an expense and money is tight right now, but if you're choosing to live in a location where gardening is not possible during the winter, you really need to consider this for yourself. Not only will it be tremendous for your mental health to get outside in a really cold winter climate where there isn't a whole lot to do and get some sun exposure and fresh air and exercise, but it will be better for your physical health as well, because you'll be moving more, you'll be getting more vitamin D from the sun, and you will be eating superior, fresher, healthier vegetables overall. So I really think that if you live in a climate like that, you need to look at a greenhouse in your backyard just like you need to look at it like a heating system in your house. It needs to be an essential thing that is for your survival. You don't have to be fancy with anything, you just need to get your fix in, and if all you can grow are collards and kale and broccoli and carrots and turnips and things like that, well, hey, that's something that is really rewarding, and my guess is you're going to have so much success doing it that you're going to think of all different types of things, find more cold hardy things that I don't even know about that you'll be able to grow. And let me tell you, it's going to do so much for you mentally and physically, you'll wonder why you didn't invest in something like that sooner. Somebody needs to tell you that. If you really love gardening, go out and make it possible, because you can, no matter where you live. We need to lead a revolution in this country. We have to stop thinking that summertime is the only gardening season there is. It's actually the most difficult gardening season. Gardening season is year-round, and wintertime is the easy gardening season. There's the least amount of problems in our way. All we need to do is find generally easy ways to protect our plants. And again, I'll link to another playlist down in the video description that shows all of my tips that will show you how to add a little bit of warmth and protection to your plants. I mean, it's the end of December, and I still have some tomatoes that are hanging on for dear life in North Carolina. If I can keep tomatoes alive until Christmas, you can keep cold hardy greens alive all winter long. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and please ring that notification bell so you're notified when I release more videos like these. Again, if you're curious about any of the builds and cold protection methods that I use, I'll link to all those playlists down in my video description, as well as a link to my Amazon storefront, which shows you everything I use in real life to garden year round. And while you're there, check out my spread shop for custom merch if you want to support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video.
Well, here I am cutting a steak, and I have a handsome young lad that's looking to get some off of me. Boy, oh boy, you're lucky that your daddy knows how to cook a steak. Perfectly medium rare. Let's see. I have a little piece for Dale. Now, you be gentle. Dale, control yourself. Gentle. Very good, buddy. Oh, he's drooling on the floor. Look at that oil slick. All right, I'll give you one more little piece. Ah, my finger. Silly boy. All right, boy. Get on your bed, buddy, and I'll give you one more. Get on your bed. Come on, Dale. On your bed. All right, buddy. Here's the last piece. No more after this, okay? We're going to put you on a diet. Oh, I dropped it. Ah, get it, get it, get it. Slippery. Good boy, Dale. Always cleaning up my mess.